Hello there, family. Welcome to Midweek Connection. I thought we'd just hang out for a few minutes this evening, and I might share with you some things that really have been personally life-changing for me. Kind of much more informal, a little less a sermon or a message, and just really share some thoughts that have really helped me to shift in my personal way of being. Because the thing is with the kind of work I do, there's a lot of demand, honestly, to constantly be coming up with things to say, constantly be, trying to, and I try not to get into this, but this happens with anybody who's a public speaker. You sort of almost compete with your last message, whatever that might have been, or your last speech, whatever that might have been. And, so you feel a pressure sometimes to really come up with more content, more material. But truly, for me, one of the things that I have wanted to do more than anything else is to really just free myself from really participating in the world of form and the rat race. And I have done a lot of personal work internally, because before I am a husband, before I'm a dad, before I'm a reverend, before I'm a singer, before I'm a friend, before I'm a son, before I'm a brother, any of these other titles, before all of that, I'm a human being who has dealt with and continues to deal with the challenges that we face as human beings. Before being a human being, I'm a spiritual being who happened to show up here at this time in our linear history. My birth was September the 2nd, 1977, so I'm told. My birth certificate said Jonathan Henry Scott. It said Caucasian, because it was sealed in America. It was America born, specifically in Georgia. And so this is sort of the identity, right, that I have carried. And through life, we learn things, we do things, we experience life. And I think you'll know what I'm talking about. Sometimes we can get lost. And even in the work I do, where the focus is spirituality. For many years, it was religion. Because that's the way I was raised. I was ordained at a young age, and had my first church as a pastor and a reverend then at age 19. I'm 45 now, so 26 years pastoring. Now, there's a space of time there where I didn't do it. I didn't draw a check as a pulpiteering pastor. But, I look back over my life and I realized that even that space of time where I, in my mind, was exiting organized religion, I was still the worship pastor, music director, performing arts director. I didn't like being called a pastor. I kind of abhorred all of that. I just disliked it. But even during that phase of time, I was still involved with the church in the Atlanta area, Bishop Joe Swilley, who's a wonderful human being. And in many ways, so many of his messages and the truths he shared helped to save me from me. So I still served as one of his staff ministers, but, I was just preferred to be called John. I wanted to move away from all of the titles. I wanted to move away from religion. I still had this love for Jesus in my heart. I still had this love, this certain nostalgia, if nothing else, for church. I still do, really, to this day. I enjoy a good worship service. I really do. And there's something to be said for that. I think that I'm finding a way to merge this fresh understanding of religion, the Bible, Jesus, God, world religions, New Thought ideals. I think I'm finding a way to merge those, and we're working toward, at First Unity at least, we're working toward trying to figure out how to merge that worship experience with a message that we believe is freeing. I'm saying all of that to say, on my journey, Of course, along the way, I've learned how to sermonize, and I've learned how to navigate through the processes of deconstruction and reconstruction for myself personally. Doctrinally and theologically, I'm very much at a different place than I was when I started 26 years ago. And, it's interesting because 26 years ago is when I started pastoring, but 6 years before that is when I started preaching. So 26, if I'm doing my math correctly, 26 plus 6 is 33. 33 years preaching for me since I was 14 years old. And I wanted to share with you, instead of sermonizing, I wanted to read a few things from this guy who I think is probably the closest to a modern day Buddha of our time. And some of the things that he shared. And I'm just going to read a few excerpts. I may expound on what they mean to me, but mostly I want you to hear his words. And one of the things I respect about Eckhart Tolle in this book, Stillness Speaks. And Eckhart's the author of The Power of Now. He's the author of A New Earth. If you've been under a rock, probably, if you don't know who Eckhart is. He decided to write this book, and in the introduction of the book, and I wouldn't know where to find it, otherwise I'd read it to you in his words. Basically, he said, this book is not something that I want you to, he said, I want you to close it and put it down more than you read it. And basically what he was saying is I want you to read portions of this and then sit with it and let it marinate in your heart. Even the title itself was intriguing to me. Stillness Speaks. So all I'm saying leading up to this is that with all of the things I think I've learned, all of the experiences that I have had with being ordained, always keeping an ordination through all of these years, but dropping out of organized religion and certainly dropping out of pulpiteering and sermonizing, through all of those stages, and now back in full-time ministry, which if you'd asked me 5 years ago, 6 years ago for sure, will you ever be in full-time ministry? I would have said no. To be back now in full-time ministry, I got to tell you, for me, I still am less intrigued by the work I do out in the public, even here, than I am by the inner work that's being done. I'm more dedicated to what is happening on the inside of me than all of the happenings outside of me. And these kinds of statements that Eckhart makes in this book help to guide a lot of that process. So I really just wanted to let you in on my process for what that is worth. Because for me, it's not just meditation, okay? It's contemplation. And as I've said, and I think I said it this morning, what you contemplate will determine the content on your plate. And if you are what you eat, then what you're contemplating is going to be what you consume. And then what you consume is going to attach to your DNA, and it's how your biology will flow. Okay, so just a few moments this evening, I want to share with you a few excerpts from the very first chapter, and we may just stay with this book for quite some time. Okay, I really wasn't going to do a book, and I told you this morning I have some things I'd like to share with you, but then this book called out to me from my bookcase in my office, and I went and picked it up, and I went, oh yeah, that's why it called to me. So looking at, and it almost doesn't have chapters. It's just kind of, honestly, it does have chapters, I guess they're called, but he writes this almost like sutras. And in the book of Psalms in the Christian Old Testament, but the Hebrew Bible, there's something that when something profound is said, the writer of the Psalms, arguably David for most of them, says the word Selah, S-E-L-A-H, which means stop or pause and think on these things. So what I really appreciate about what Eckhart said with this is that I want you to spend time pausing and thinking on these things. And I'm going to ask us to do that as well. So I'm going to share some things with you that I believe are very profound, but I'm going to ask us to pause and think on them. I'm going to ask us to take time to sit with these. And of course, because it's Midweek Connection and we don't have a chance to sit together and necessarily discuss, I will share with you, sort of my point of view on some of these things. But I really want you to consider taking these short segments on Wednesday nights, because this is not going to be as long as it normally is. And one of the reasons is because I really don't want to contaminate these truths with a lot of my talk and a lot of my commentary. Some of you would say, well, John, you've been talking for like 11, 12 minutes now. Yes, because I wanted to lead up to this. But just to let you know that this is going to be a little bit of a read these things and then pause and think on them, okay? So here it is. When you lose touch with your inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. Your innermost sense of self, of who you are, is inseparable from the stillness. This is the I am that is deeper than your name and your form. I want to read that back through again, share just a section of what this is speaking to me, and then I'm going to let you go, because I want you to soak in on this, okay? This is not about me preaching. This is about us together communing over some of these wonderful sutras and verses, really. When you lose touch with your inner self, or your inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. Your innermost sense of self, of who you are, is inseparable from stillness. This is the I am that is deeper than name and form. Your innermost sense of self, of who you are, is inseparable from the stillness. And this is why I think even the Bible says, be still and know that I am. In the stillness and in the quiet, you rediscover, uncover, recover your true and authentic self. So anything that costs you your peace, remember, is too expensive. When you become unsettled, though, and you lose that sense of stillness, peace that Papa Jim talks about, when you lose yourself, and then you get lost in the world. And this is why even the Tao Te Ching says, return to the center. These are the kinds of things, folks, that keep me in my constant state of constructing to become the best version of me that I could ever be. So much more important than a sermon, so much more important than a song. In your stillness, there dwells your true self. So I'll read this through again. When you lose touch with your inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. Your innermost sense of self, of who you are, is inseparable from stillness. This is the I am that is deeper than your name and your form. I love you all. Now go and make it a great evening, because you can. Peace.